What room are you in, Eric Mora? It's called Weird Science. Does that have to do with Chicago?
Oh my God, why didn't you just stay in the room with me?
I know, that's why I'm laughing. Like that, like
We were
like
just together.
This is the problem of post. I've had this happen 2 or 3 times this week. This is the post-pandemic problem where we are so used to being separate that we don't realize that we could be together. It's these hybrid meetings are
I told him I was meeting with you.
I know, but I think it's just getting used to the idea that we might actually all be in the same place.
Oh my God.
Honestly, Eric, I think you owe Tim an explanation.
Yeah, like it's twice now that you haven't wanted to come in the conference room with me. Like, what's going on?
I'm going to send you both toothbrushes, mouthwash. Okay, do we think we have most everybody? I'm going to just go ahead and start, right? Okay, people, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. And it's going to look like a lot of Excel spreadsheets to start off, but don't worry, it'll get better. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. If you have gotten the link to the folder on OneDrive, you'll see that this is the folder structure. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the folder structure. The raw data is just really the raw data, and you don't want to go there if you don't have to. It's the unclean. Oh, look at Eric's joining. There we are. Hashtag in it together. And you really don't want to go in there if you don't have to, but it has all the details and it's all the original data. The 3 folders that you'll spend most of your time in is the state data, the summary, which is the summary data, and any of the reports or the PowerPoint things will be in this one that's called reports. In the state data, I've divided it up into 2 things, public and private, because the way we bill is really different. In private, most of it goes to whatever the foundation or a unique business organization that owns that private school. And in public, it's always 100% of the time, I can tell you because I've been through all the data, a district or some Department of Education building. So it's never a school, it's typically a district or a state of New York, state of this kind of thing. So just letting you know. So that's super important to understand the differences between those. And then, as I said, the third one has all of the reports in it. I'm going to start though with the public states, and just to let you know that the public states right now has all 50 states plus DC. And so you'll be able to pull off those worksheets for whatever states you're responsible for. So for instance, I'm going to use Jolene's. I know that Jolene, you've got Virginia, right? So I've got Virginia showing right now. Every state has the same thing. I can see at the top quickly that there's 2,000 schools, public schools. I can see that 7 of them are charter. I can see what the Title I is. And why do I put the Title I in there? That means it's a school that probably is in an economically at-risk area, and they have to get federal funding. This is important for you to understand when you go to sell, because you need to know how much money is coming from the feds, how much money is coming from the state, and how much is coming from the local community, because there's always 3 pots of money for public schools. Eric, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Can you please let in our conference room?
Yeah, Uncle Buck is in, although that sounds like it's not PC, correct?
Yeah, sorry.
Uncle Buck. Okay, so oh God, the link to the folder is in, let me get to my keynote then. It's on this last page of the keynote. God, where's that? Oops, I didn't mean to move the whole thing. There you go. There's the link to the folder. So I know this is still small, but I wanted to show you that I've done the same thing and that all the data is really super, super clean. So because I'm doing the public schools, everything is organized under district. The district column is the master column. It's because that's what we're selling to. So to give an example of, again, Virginia, if I look at this carefully and I want to see where there's sales, I see right here, I have put 6,000. I'm going to make this bigger now for you because this is nightmare to see it. $6,888 there. And then you see ... That's because if I go over here to Alexandria City Preschools and I only choose that, you'll see that wherever there's a district sale over here in this column, you can still see what it is, but I put the asterisk to show you that's a district sale. All of those schools are in the district. Does that make sense to you? In other words, I still wanted you to be able to see the individual schools in case you're having conversations with the individual schools, but the district spend is the $6,888 because that's who gets the bills. Okay, is that helpful? And so that makes it really easy for you to see. So Virginia, believe it or not, in the top 120 public school districts, this is good news for you, Jolene, has 5 of the largest districts. And in fact, the public school systems in Virginia have more, whereas Pennsylvania, which I think you just inherited, Kim, only has 1 big public school district, and that's the Philadelphia City School District. The same is true for New York. New York only has 1. It's the New York City School District, where California has like 6 or 8, and Florida has like 10 or 12. So Florida and California have somewhere between 8 and 12 public school districts in the top 120 districts, but we're not selling to even half of those, just to let you know. So that's understanding how that works. So you can update this at all the time. It's got all the information that you would need to go back and find anything about that. And the other thing, there's one more other anomaly that I'll go through on the public schools, is that Arizona, as you know, a very Trump right-wing state, and I asked my sisters because they both live there, I said, how come this state has more charter schools than any other state in the union? And they said, it's because the politics, any group of parents, any religious group, any group of mercenaries living out in life are putting together schools and they're getting approved. They have more teachers and they have more charter schools than any other state. That means those charters in some cases are the big charters like KIPP and some of the big main charter school companies. But in many cases, it's just a group of people who got together and decided to put a school together in Arizona. So that's the anomaly. And I wanted to explain why it's an outlier and has more charter schools. Charter schools are always public schools. I've looked this up because I wasn't quite sure. They're never considered to be private schools because they get state funding and they are basically a replacement or in situ. In other words, a community has decided to follow all the rules of a public school district and organize it locally with a family, with the families, the key stakeholders there. Does that make sense to all of you? If there's more questions about charter schools, I will ask you, but it is a crazy thing. Now, the interesting thing is there's a lot of states that don't have hardly any charter schools. Most of the Northeast and most of the northern part of central region don't even have charter schools, and but they don't have a lot of private schools either. So just letting you know, it goes back and forth. So Northeast has the fewest public school districts, and the central part of the United States has the most public school districts, but they're small, they're not charter. People are happy to have them be the way they've always been, the way they were developed when people came across in covered wagons and set up the different cities and townships, just to let you know. So it has a lot to do. You're always looking for numbers of students. So that's the state by state. So every one of you now can pull that off and make your territory match whatever that you're covering. The other one that's going to be super important for you is the master one, which is in the second folder that I told you about. And it's really important because what you have here is a view of the entire United States, and that gives you a comparison of what everything's like. So this is all of the states all of the public states and all of the private states. What's the difference here? You can't see the individual schools. You're looking at statewide data in this one. Everybody with me on that one? You're not looking by district and you're not looking by school. On the private school one, you're looking by school or owner. Again, all of the private school ones tend to be one, unless it's got a pre-K, middle school, and high school. In other words, typically most of the private schools are just one line on the spreadsheets. What's great here is you can look at anything in terms of the number of schools, the amount of enrollment, and the number of teachers. When you're selling to HR, what thing is going to be really important? Teachers is going to indicate to you the size of employees. And so if you're selling for talent, that's going to be the most important thing for you. If you're thinking about selling to, if we're starting to do more sales, and I know Mike can address this later on, I know we're trying to do something with New York of selling into high schools or middle schools for LinkedIn Learning, then you would be looking at students and you would not be looking at primary schools, you would probably be looking at high schools. And you'd have to go back to those state by state ones to look at those individual schools. It is important to know that at the bottom of this one, I put all the totals of everything. And for the public schools, there's like around 100,000, maybe there's more now since I started doing this. It shows you the amount of enrollment in the United States, but it shows you also, so if we're looking at the total sales that we brought in 2021, we can see that 3% of the sales went to Glint. Believe it or not, Alaska has a huge contract with Glint. 65% of the sales went to talent, and 32% of the sales went to LinkedIn Learning. So LinkedIn Learning is still a significant stream of revenue, even though it's not the primary stream of revenue. There are many, many districts buying it for their faculty, staff, and administration. And there are many school districts where in the high school or in the CTE, which are the high schools that have occupational and CTE training, which if you know the university one, it's trying to get people prepared for careers where maybe you only need a certification or 2 years of college. So those all are using LinkedIn Learning because they're teaching skills that like how to do computers on a car, or how to do things like that. We did see an uptick in high school students using LinkedIn Learning during COVID. If you think about what most high schools are like, their main curriculum is prepare people to enter the 4-year college system, but they don't really have electives. For instance, an example of my own 2 children, their electives were Spanish, French, German, or Russian. It wasn't really like they got to take mobile applications. So what we saw during COVID is that there were a lot of high school students watching additional things. I want to do an entrepreneurial course. I want to learn how to start my own business on Etsy. I want to do these kinds of things. So we saw an uptick of things that wouldn't be what I would call core high school curriculum, but definitely would add skills for you in college and in the workplace. So that is a way to think about selling that if you're talking to people in high schools, how to give the people those kinds of skills that they'll need in the workplace that wouldn't necessarily be taught in high school. Students are very savvy. They're really aware of it. They were watching lots of branding courses, all of these things, how to start your own business, how to do payroll, how to do financing. Those are the kind of courses that they were watching, leadership courses, not necessarily Photoshop 101. Just thought it would be interesting. And almost everything that we had in UX and in mobile applications up for them because they're pitching these things. They're in projects where their teachers are saying, create a mobile application about climate change, but the teacher's not teaching them how to use those tools or how to set up a mobile application. Okay, so that's this one. It's got a lot of information. There's 2 states that have no data on teachers. One of them is Illinois, and the other one is Utah. And they simply refuse to turn it into the feds. That's the reason it's not there. They just don't like giving the feds that information. So I don't have it for you. Just letting you know why there's 2 states that just don't do it. Okay, you could, and that is on the data from the federal school data systems. Just to let you know, I didn't make that up. But you can see pretty much everything that's going on, and you can put it in any order that you want. We have 541 deals. What do I mean by 541 deals? That means we have 541 accounts that we work with, or in this case, around 500 school districts 448 public school districts and 93 private schools. When you know that there are already 100, and if you add in the private schools, there's 120,000 schools in the United States. I'm not even talking about Canada, just the United States. This is, we are just sticking our bait into the lake and pulling up or getting phone calls. Do you understand? We are not really strategically selling to state by state, which is one of the reasons I'm going to now go into the report. Any questions so far? So the data is actually, oh, one more part that you can, if you just want to see sales and not the school district size, and then you want to see it by school, because I wanted to make sure you can see all the detail. The second tab on this is all the LinkedIn sales, and wherever you see yellow, that is a private school. So I mixed private and public together. This is really great because for the managers, you can now search by region. You can search by rep name, and some of these rep names are going to change, Karen. I haven't updated this for the new assignment, but there's not too many that are different. And then again, you can search by whether it's talent, whether it's LinkedIn Learning or Glint, or what we'll probably end up calling engagement. Okay, so that's all available there. That's just sales for LinkedIn, current sales. And then the last one, which is really important because this is the strategic one, is that we should be selling to the top 100 public school districts. But for instance, in California, we're really only selling to one of the biggest school districts, and that's LA Unified. But in the top 120, I'm just going to go here by state and deselect it. And if I just select California, and then I select Florida, and I'll select New York. What you see here is that there are so many, these are our 3 largest states that we sell to. They have the 3 largest populations of public school attendees. And that you can see wherever there's $0, that means we don't have any skin in the game. And there's a lot. So for instance, New York, we do not have a deal with New York. It is the biggest school district in New York. We have no deals with them. That would be if I, Karen and Kim and Jolene know that I always make this list of the top 10 I want for the year. Well, New York would be on my top 10 if you were asking me. My Mary Meeker list, that would be a top 10 for me. LA Unified we have, but you can see if I order it by states here, there are, in fact, in the top 120, 14 school districts that we should be targeting in California that are very, very large, larger than most of the states like Iowa, Idaho, Wyoming. In other words, where are you going to spend your time? Where there's students and teachers. So this is super, super important. If you have California, you want to spend extra time on California because it's a big state. The same with Florida. I guess now I'm talking to Katie and Megan because you both have these states. Florida has 17 of the top public school districts in the top 120. So for us, key for next year, because Mike and I really want to see these numbers double, right, Mike? We want to see these numbers double here, because if we go strategically, we should be able to see those numbers double. We should be, our goal should be that California and Florida are $1 million states. And the only way they can be $1 million states is if we in fact go after these top school districts, which by the way, is 40% of all the students in the United States. So if we don't get California and we don't get Florida and we don't get New York, and if you add New York in, it's half of all the students, it's everybody, okay? Everybody understand the strategic importance here of looking at these top 120 school districts. Really, really important, and really important for you to look and see all, and that's where we're seeing white space is in these school districts. Yeah, just to say you have sold something in that state, it's not going to be good enough for Mike and me, who will vicariously be living through Mike's experience next year, thinking, why aren't we seeing more traction throughout a state, not just a sale in a state? That's not going to be good enough for next year. Am I being too mean, Mike, here on this part? Yeah, Mike's letting me be the bad girl. I'm going to be the devil here. Okay, so now let's go into the keynote. When you're selling to states, or to any targeted audience, and this is K through 12, it's really super important to understand what culturally and financially is going on behind that. So as we look at this, the spend in the schools, this again is what I told you, we have 3%, 65 and 32. Our current spend is $5.2 million. I project that we could have 10 million by next year and 15 million by the third year, that we should be doubling these numbers. Karen, you remember in the early days of lynda.com, when we were first starting to target higher ed, we were going around 44% increase year over year, those first 3 years when we were really being strategic. That's the kind of push that Mike and I would say would be normal when you have a very big pond like this that hasn't been tackled very much. This is the current districts. It's changed a little bit because now Pennsylvania is Kim's, Virginia's is Jolene, and there's someone else, there's another one in that area that I can't remember which one, but letting you know that that's different. This is how many elementary schools there are, secondary schools, and combined schools. Why do we care about secondary schools? Secondary schools is where you can sell to LinkedIn Learning. You're not trying to sell to every K. There are gazillion kindergarten and preschools and K through 7. But we would really, if we were going to sell LinkedIn Learning, we'd have a better chance in high schools with staff and administrators. Again, why the big districts matter. This is the percentage of public versus and private in the United States. 93% of the schools are public. This is how many are charter, and this is how many are private. So we really want to focus on these big public school districts. I know I've now said that 3 times, but I find that you have to keep repeating things. There's considerable number, 6 million students attend private schools. And that may be something that we actually think about in the future, is that really we just have one person targeting private schools and another person targeting states with large public school districts. You may not just want to just state by state, but just hand everybody a state. Where can you do your best work? Where can you know your client the best? There are all types of training in K through 12. There's adult education, elementary, middle school, high school, pre-kindergarten, secondary. On that first Excel spreadsheet, I've indicated which of these 5 things or 6 things they are. So you can look at any individual school, and if you were trying to sell to a school that has a large number of adult education, you have a pretty good chance of selling LinkedIn Learning and doing talent, because they're doing a large number of programs to get people out into the workforce. Student demographics, this is the breakup. And as you can see, the fastest growing segment is Hispanic. And how many students have computers and internet access? Why is this important? We have great digital tools, great things about digital literacy. In order to use our talent things, you have to have access to linkedin.com and the feed and all of that. So this is really important to see. But what we found here in looking at it nationwide is the access is getting better. The FCCC has done an amazing job this year and continues to do an amazing job in partnership with the local organizations, state organizations, and the phone companies, the carriers, providers. But we're finding that training isn't what's necessary. And I was in a pilot program in Arizona with the indigenous populations in the Navajo area. They got everybody internet, but not everybody knew how to use the internet, how to do things on the internet. So that training, if you were trying to sell to a state, let's say you're selling in Colorado, Colorado has maybe 10 Native American Indian reservations. That might be one of your pitches, is how to make that be more accessible so that there's digital literacy and that their people in that state can work and learn from anywhere in that state. Very important concept. This is how much money we spend on it. And there's a lot of money. And there's a lot of Fed money. And again, there's always 3 pots. There's going to be Fed, state, local. Always 3 pots when you're talking about public school districts. We've gone through that. Now I'll go to the maps. So in the public states, where are the top 5 states? This isn't anything about LinkedIn sales. Where are the most people, and the most, as I told you, is California, Texas, New York, and Florida. Those are our top 4 states. Number 5, you can see it's with Illinois is in there. Illinois has a huge number of public school students, and that's really important to know. So Mike, Illinois might be one where you decide to give somebody just Illinois to go really after Illinois, because it's going to be in the top 5. Right after that is Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and New Jersey. And notice again, most of the states are in the central area of the United States, not up in the Northeast. Here, how many school districts are there? There are 13,000, over 13,000 school districts. This is data I put in 2 different forms. One is by the numbers and one is a comparison. So even though New York only has 1 large public school district in the top 100, look at it compared to LA Unified. It's got twice as many students. So even though it's 1 school district, it's the potential for selling is twice as large as LA Unified School District. But if you go down the list, you see that Miami, I've made it pink for you. Look at all the Florida districts that are in the top 10. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 school districts in the top 10 in Florida. And as you can see, all of the numbers are around 200,000 plus. This is the top school districts, and this shows the spend. So you can see where wherever you see 0 is basically a white space school. And that should give you, if you're assigned these states, that should give you an idea of what school districts you should be tackling. I'll just go back to that. So right now, of the top 120 districts, we only have 43% penetration there. And as you can see, in many, many cases, it's under $20,000. Hardly anything, nickels and dimes. Not in the, when I was talking with Mike, we think a nice healthy round number for most of these states would be $75,000 to $150,000 for next year for some of these mid-tier states. This is the public enrollment. Again, this is where you're going to sell, where there's more seats, more people. This is the number of teachers. That's going to be for you to target where you should sell in talent. Again, Arizona, I've already explained the anomaly. Why is Arizona number 1? Because every friggin' charter school gets to do whatever they want. So it is a lot of teachers, but it's going to be a very hard state to sell to, because you're going to have to sell to gazillions of individual charter schools. Do you see how it's going to take a lot of time to do this one? It's very transactional in Arizona. But Texas, California, Florida, New York, and in this case, Pennsylvania pops up. That's good news for you, Kim. And Virginia's number 10. That's good news for you, Jolene. So whenever you're in the top 10, that means you have a pretty good chance of being able to sell well into talent for these 10 states. Okay, so this is the private, as you can see, the private schools are based on comparison to the number of all schools in the whole United States. And as you can see, there's no dark blues here because there are very few private schools compared to the number of public schools. California has the most private schools than Florida, Pennsylvania, New York, and Texas. This is the private school enrollment and the number of private teachers. These are much, much smaller numbers than what you're seeing in the public school districts. So this is the penetration that these are the top 5 states: California, Texas, Illinois, New York, and Florida. And these 5 states right now make up a little more than half of the money that we bring in to K through 12. Half. So this really shows you how we have to really focus on these states in order to double that number. So that spend number that we're saying, which is about 2.7, really by next year, you'd want to see it around 5 to 6 million. Oh, this is the top 10 states in spend. Notice New Jersey's here, Pennsylvania's here, Georgia's here, Florida, Texas, Illinois. These are the states that we should be focusing on when you're trying to spend your time. You're not going to make a lot of money in a lot of our white space states, which are Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, and South Dakota. You're not going to make a lot of money there. And when we're starting off, you want to start off strategically where there's money and where we already have current sales, so that we already have examples to show in those states. This is just to let you know, even though these top 5 states are big, when we look at all the public schools by enrollment, you can see that California only has like 10%, Texas only has 10%. So there's no one state that owns all the public school district. It's very well spread out amongst the states. Okay, so now we're to the white space. This is the true white space. Wherever you see white means we have $0 sales. The top of the chart, what my comparison number was $1 million. So if you had $1 million, you would have a deep navy blue state. The only states coming close to that are Texas, California, and New York. We have no $1 million states. We're getting close in Texas, close, but we're not there yet. And as you can see in New York, California, they kind of run neck and neck. Florida, I feel like we could do way more in Florida, way more in Florida. I feel like that's half of what it should be. So I would not suggest right now for next year that you focus a lot of time and energy on your white space states, because one of the reasons is they have very few they have very few people. You want to focus on where the people are and where the employment is. These are the regional maps showing how it looks regionally, because one of the things I thought, Eric and Karen, is that you'd want to start bringing in the other 2 managers to start looking at K-12 and how reps in their regions could support what's going on. And so that what you see when we do it by region is that it's pretty even. You see that right now? It's pretty even amongst the 4 regions that we're bringing in. And that now does include the Canada data. And on the master list in the second sheet, which shows all sales, Canada is represented. So just letting you know, Crystal, I haven't forgotten about you. All of Canada's in there. And you're doing a very good job in the Northeast of bringing in money for the region. And that's important to know. If you look at the Northeast, it's a combo of 2 countries, not just the United States. I haven't addressed it separately as a country because it's a different system, Crystal, and you know that. And I would have a one-on-one with you about what's going on in Canada. This shows West and Central, and this shows state by state what we're bringing into each state. But as you can again see, there are a lot of states where our average sale is like 20%. We'd like to see that doubled, 50% in some states. But across the states where we have sales, the average or median sale is 125,000 per state. Just letting you know. And that's Southeastern Canada. And again, Crystal, hats off to you. Look at all the penetration that you've done in Canada. You actually have done a really good job there, particularly in Quebec and Ontario, which I'm not surprised. I feel like British Columbia, Crystal, would be one I would focus on next year for you. I feel like that could be a higher number because of the population in British Columbia. I don't think you have to worry about all the little islands, okay? And when you get into the Arctic regions, the only thing there would be, could you sell across to the indigenous reservations and make deals with the indigenous populations, which is a good thing to do for access. And then Katie, here's your current region, what it looks like, West and Central, and Megan, what your current region looks like in terms of Northeast Canada and Southeast. And so now you would want to, now after I've given this presentation, you want to create targets for potential spend across one LinkedIn. Where would you want those? What I would suggest is you go work with your manager and come up with a prediction of what you would like to set those goals. And your manager may already have an idea. Eric and Karen may already have ideas what the goals for each of those states should be, but sort of say what is the goal of spend going to be in these 3 categories, and what states and what districts are you going to focus on, as opposed to just saying state. Don't worry about state anymore. Focus on districts where you have the most amount of chance of making a better deal. The good news is all the sales that you currently have are great examples of what's working. And now you can use LA Unified District to talk to the other 11 districts in California about what's working for a school district. You can use that data. Again, the only state where I thought it was lagging the most was Florida. I'd like to see those numbers way up in Florida. But just to let you know, traditionally, Karen knows this from historic, Florida was hard for us to get. It's been a slow, Florida we knew had potential, but it's always been hard for us to get it. This is I mean, with Kevin getting the all-in deal for Florida State University system, it's the last of the big 5 states to come in with that, right, Karen? We haven't. Florida's been a hard road, a long road. You know, where other states are all in right from the beginning, like Illinois, Indiana, Pennsylvania. You know, things like that. And the reason why does it work better in the central part of America? The reason it works better in the central part of America is that, I'm going to quit sharing my screen and then I can answer questions, is that those states have to work together. They don't have the budgets that California and New York do. They don't have the populations. So Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota have to work together. And Ohio, Indiana, and Iowa have to work together. They almost have their own, they don't announce it, but all of their districts are really where they work together regionally to get the best deals from Microsoft, to get the best deals on spending. So they work regionally, almost like cohorts. So that's really, they don't work as an independent state because they wouldn't get the best deals because they don't have the population. Does that make sense to you guys? That you'll see that grouping. And that's what I think, Crystal, in Canada you can do. You can say, look what we're doing in Quebec and Ontario. We consider you to be at the same level, same par of educational systems for K through 12. And we really want to see traction here to make sure that your students, your faculty are getting the same access to the one LinkedIn products that the other provinces are. And you'll lean heavy on what you've done currently to get British Columbia in so that they look, you want to say, I want the top 3 provinces to be performing at the best so that we can help the whole country. Okay. Have I stopped sharing? I think I have. Any questions anybody wants to talk about or issues they want to bring up?
You are still sharing.
Oh shit, where is it? Okay, stop. Okay, there we go. Now I can talk to anyone who wants to talk to me.
I think this data is amazing, Lori, that you provided. I mean, I definitely have just a couple concerns, mostly from like bandwidth perspective, but I think that's more something to try and figure out like after the new fiscal year starts. But it's super helpful to have this information. And I know we really appreciate you taking time to do this before you're retired.
Right. And the thing, Katie and Megan, is you've had outstanding numbers all year. I'm not saying that anything that you've done is wrong,
Right.
but I'm just saying, I think when you're looking where you want to be 3 to 5 years from now, you want to have a more strategic game plan, less picking up the phone and putting out fires and more thinking like, how can I move this in, really lift and elevate what you're doing so that it becomes less transactional, better practices around how to get a whole district in. I mean, if I were staying around next year and Mike said to me, what's the thing you think you should do? I'd say, I'd really like to work with Katie and Megan on how we should approach a district. What should our narrative be? How should we sell into a district? How do we help them over 3 years bump up to being a system-wide district buy-in? That's the kind of thing I would work with you. And the charter schools, I would try to work with the top, like work with KIP and work with some of the top charter school organizations rather than state by state by state. Is there a deal that can be had for the big organizations supporting charter schools? That I don't have on this report, but there's KIP, there's about 4 or 5 that are really big into K through 12. And Mike, we saw a lot of those at the ASU GSD. They were all there.
Yeah. Hey, one thought I'd love to just put on the table for y'all to think about is like, just remind me a little bit of what the AE business at LinkedIn looked like when I first joined. And, one of the questions like that those teams used to ask themselves is like, what do we say no to? Like when there's like so much stuff in front of you that you could like close tomorrow if you chose to, the opportunity cost in that is like, you don't have time to go back to the other stuff that might take longer and be more strategic. So I think it's worth thinking about, like, as you guys wrap your arms around the data and like the value of a system, the value of a New York City like deal, like getting firm, and we did this in the government team too, where we sort of say like to a customer, this is kind of what it takes to be successful. This is like table stakes in terms of budget and solution mix. And like, if you're not there today, that's okay, but we should probably like defer this conversation until, you have the support of your leadership and yada, yada, yada. So just thinking about like maybe where you say no next year as a means to, create and alleviate some of that bandwidth stuff is probably a good thought exercise.
Yeah, I would love to continue that conversation on how to push back, because I don't want to speak for Megan. Although I'm pretty sure the sentiment's the same, but right now it's just me and her drowning with these super small new business calls that SD is putting on our calendars, where it's just taking up most of our days. And so, like I was telling Karen, my one-on-one, growing strategically is really hard, because all these little, we just need 2 job slots in a recruiter seat and this, that, and the other. And it's a lot of work, and it's hard to see how we can grow strategically when we have all this little crap on our plates. So
Yeah. And I think that's where we are right now, is we're like entering territory planning and sort of just the planning process for next year. I think like that is a very important conversation for us to bottom out.
Well, and the one thing you have, which Kim and Jolene, I want to go back to you, because you each have one state for K through 12. And so Mike, you have 2 states where you can just see, what if I put one dedicated person on this state, what do they get done? You know, when they know what the school districts are to go after, when they know what that is. You know, Katie's got what, 30 states to go after? I mean, some ridiculous amount of ridiculous. I mean, we know that where it gets more strategic if you limit the number of states that you're trying to serve. We know this from higher ed. Why do you think we have Jared attached to New York, Kevin to Florida, and Ryan? Because they're working on state systems deals and school by school systems deals. And that's what, Katie, you're saying. I don't have time to think like that if all I'm doing is picking up the phone and transactionally helping these under $25,000 deals that keep coming through. So I think, Eric, I would really work with Jolene and Kim, and there's one other one that has, so there's some other person that has a K through 12, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who it is. They're in your Southeast region. So you have a perfect opportunity here between, Eric, everybody on your team tells me you're a whiz at HR and talent. So seeing what you do with these 2 top salespeople in higher ed, if they're just focused on one state for K through 12, will be an interesting proof of concept for me. I would be watching them to see what works for them, but they only have one state and how that goes. And do they go to the Department of Education for the state of Virginia? Do they go to the Department of Education at Pennsylvania to talk about how to maximize what's going on in K through 12 districts? Is there a possibility to do a state deal so that every district in that state gets the same opt-in deal, just like we do with state universities in California, community colleges? I mean, there might be a whole different way of selling to the school districts than what we're doing right now, which is one by one, phone call by phone call, whoever calls us up. Same for you, Crystal, in your area. You know, can I think how I can work this, that every province can sort of have the same deal for whatever they're trying to do in each of their K through 12 arenas?
Yeah, I know we're working on a consortium with Alberta right now. I actually have a meeting end of August with all the presidents of the colleges there.
Yeah, so you can see how that when you go that way, if it's a top-down decision that says, you know, these 12 districts in California all have the ability to opt in at this level, that's huge potential and less picking up the phone. So when we were in the same spot in higher ed, what I would try to say to people is, think that you have 3 streams of revenue: your strategic revenue, your bread and butter that's really helping you meet your quarterly goals, and all these phone calls and fires that keep coming in. And you know, how can I balance that? And that's where you need to work with that's where your manager really should help you here, and just thinking, okay, I'm going to spend 1 day a week on strategic, or 2 days a week, 3 days on fires, phone calls, and keeping the renewals and my customers happy. Maybe it's a 2-3, maybe it starts off with a 1-4. Just letting yourself have that, kind of giving yourself that permission to make 1 day about that, and then 4 days is about XXX. When we started doing that, it helped people calm down their nervousness. Like I can tell in Katie's voice, she's afraid of not addressing a customer who is ready to go. And so you have to sort of like, you know, think about how to divide up your time and conquer. And so maybe it's a 1-4, and then second quarter you move into a 2-3. Does that make sense to you? Kind of balancing that out so that you kind of know. And then pushing back on like Mike and Karen and Eric and saying, hey, we need more help in this. We need more reps. The first thing I said to Mike is, you need more reps. That's the very first thing I said. If you want to start being more strategic, we need more reps. Because you can't expect Katie and Megan to be covering 30 states and be effective in any one state perfectly. And I know Katie and Megan they're like perfect good girls. They want to be 99% good, right, all the time. Look at the numbers they're bringing in right now. It's all over 100%. So they think it's a bad day if they get 110. Some of us are happy with 95. Okay, just letting you know. So we need to balance that out so they're not feeling I feel like they're underwater. Brandon, you're like data king. Do you have any thoughts here? Any ideas, suggestions?
This is so awesome. I want to bathe in it. It's so good. The only thing I can think of in terms of extending it is over the next year, there's going to be a huge shift in terms of where teachers are, and especially with the big districts, and enrollment declines, especially in major urban districts. So the one thing I would think of also for the next year is think about ESSER funds. Those ESSER funds are going to be key towards where you're going to be able to sell. And they actually already have, I think the Georgetown Economics Lab, I just put it in the chat. They already put together an interactive map of where the ESSER funds are, and you can go through state by state. Unfortunately, not with Pennsylvania. But they have
same on the broadband access funds. Those are going to continue to come in the next. And so where there's broadband access funds, that means there's training and hiring.
So those ESSER funds have to be used by 2024.
Yep.
And they're right now, because there's so many shifts in terms of where the hiring stratagems are, they're dedicating more of those ESSER funds to hiring than they were at the beginning of the pandemic.
Since I did the report, because there's now data coming out, teachers are leaving like droves. So what's that mean for you? Good for you in HR and talent. You can help them get teachers, right? So if you can help people get teachers, that will do. We're not going to see the numbers drop, Brandon, as much as we see in college, because students have to be in school till 16 to 18. It's kind of required. So we'll see it because of just the people aren't having as many babies, a drop, but we're not going to see the drop that we've seen in colleges and universities. And right now that's happening because there's a huge demand in the workforce. And what's working learner going to do? Go out and get a job before they go take school. So we're going to see that level off. We're already, because I do think we're going to go into somewhat of a recession, and we'll see that, just like we saw learning went up 4 times during the recession, but it started to go back down as people returned to work and had more normal schedules again. We'll see the same thing happen in hiring for higher. We'll see that shift a little bit, but we won't see it in teachers. Teachers are flooding. They're leaving. Schools are desperate to get teachers.
And it's interesting too. So like with CPS, and also I just put in there are 32,000 teachers in Illinois, a little bit more, like 32,300. But like with CPS, they're losing about 10,000 students a year. And where those students are going are charter schools primarily, or they're going out of the urban districts into suburban and exurban districts. So you're seeing a shift there. And then of course, and
just to let you know, California, Texas, and Florida are having more and more schools all the time. Texas and Florida have the most schools that are being added. So letting you know, Texas is adding schools all the time because people are flocking to Austin and Dallas and San Antonio and places like that. Because one of the things that this pandemic did is get people to think, I can work anywhere. I'm going to work where I can buy a house for $350,000 instead of $1.5 million in Northern California or Southern California. And you're seeing a shift. The same in Colorado as well. So Colorado's adding, Florida's adding. I hope if there are any other questions, or if I'm around all next week. And so if anyone wants to do a one-on-one with me or do a deep dive, just set up an appointment with me. My calendar's pretty open. Just ping me and I'll do what I do, which is I haven't done it with the K-12, but I do a deep dive. We look at everything. We look at where you should spend time, where you shouldn't spend time. And we create that. These are the top 10 things I want to, if I could get these deals this year, I'd be happy as a clam. This would make me feel good about the race. And I think there'll be Michael, don't you think there'll be a lot of change in the personnel and adding and blowing this area out? This is pretty much new territory.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, I don't know there are going to see material changes this year, but I can tell you that we just did a separate biz ops analysis on academic, and K12 in North America is like shows up consistently with this as being like this massive space in terms of opportunity. So there's going to be energy towards trying to grow this space like over the arc of the next couple of years. Maybe we'll do some incremental headcount this year, depending on what the world looks like in 6 months. But it's definitely a growth area and one we have a lot to get after. And Lori, this is just amazing work. Thank you for wrapping your arms around it. Also, like folks, like some of the most tedious work you can imagine. This is like calling data from different sources and normalizing it and coding it, and like it's tough.
Yeah,
So
don't go
thank
into
you for
folder
grinding through it.
one. Don't go into folder. Brandon, you can go into folder number 1, but all the URLs and the links to that are there. And I know that I only have, just to let you know, if the numbers of sales numbers don't look exactly right, just remember that Karen and I were only able to pull through like January of 2022. So I know that I know Katie and Megan, you've made a lot more money and done a lot more sales since then. So you may want to take your state things and update those with the numbers that you have on the books. Because I actually, not to diss Viva or Salesforce, I actually find having the spreadsheet of just those states, state by state, is very helpful to look at it that way, as opposed to across one of your big Salesforce type apps. You can control that and change your data. For instance, Nicole in hers takes her state by state data, and she green lines her top 10. She red lines what she thinks not worth her spending her time on, and she yellow marks the things that she thinks that she has to spend some time on because she doesn't want to lose them, that she needs to keep the boat steady. So there's, add your columns of key to go after, got to take care of these people or they could churn out. And then really, I don't need to spend a lot of time on this part. And that will keep you from looking at every single school district in every single state. That's what I would do. I would immediately think, what should I be focusing on in this state? And so not the whole state. Okay, guys, I'll let you go. It's always good when you can end 5 minutes early. Again, if I can help you with anything, but the school data is pretty much accurate. And I want you to, it's true, Mike, I did go to 3 sources and each one of them said there's 120, 125, and 130 schools in the United States. So none of them had the exact same data. It's a moving target. And watch out for dang Arizona and all those charter schools.
Thank you, Lori, for this.
Lori.
Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.